and everything else is absolutely beautiful. Leicestershire, is it Leicestershire?
Yeah, North Leicestershire.
Absolute beautiful place you live in. Welcome to Unfiltered Lives, the other side. We got an email from you just telling us a little bit about your story and asking if you could share your story. So thanks for inviting us down. So if you could maybe start with the start, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you're doing for a living now, and then we'll go back and then we'll go into your past, if that's okay.
Yeah. So my name's Nick. I'm a recovering addict. I currently work for CGL, which is the drug services in Nottinghamshire, as a detox worker, which I suppose is a miracle in itself. Seems, not too long ago, somebody that had to access them services with, for many years, with not really much hope of getting out of them services, really.
So I am absolutely intrigued. So you were in addiction and now you actually work for addiction services. How has that happened? How is that? Take us back to the start, Nick. Where did all this unfold?
I mean, as a youngster, you can, from the work that I've done on myself, I can see things that trace back really to when I was very young, and it's on the face of it quite a nice upbringing from my parents. I didn't doubt that I was loved as a child, and didn't really want for anything as a child. And myself and my brother, I'd probably say I was quite a sensitive child, quite fearful in some ways. But a lot of this is hindsight as well. I got on with a lot of people. I didn't have any problems growing up, fitting in or nothing. But it sort of on the face of it. But I felt like I struggled to fit in.
Yeah,
maybe at times.
So you've had a normal childhood. School was okay, Mum, would you say?
Yeah. So I did all right at school. It was one of them where I could have done better, but I did all right. There was everything was like a good childhood. There was a bit of abuse when I was a young child, sexual abuse.
Would you say that's played a part on what's happened later in life?
Not directly. I would say that's gonna. That must have had some effect, and and how I felt within myself, or building trust in relationships and stuff like that. But it was never something that was like consciously in the forefront of my mind, and I never consciously thought, the pain from that, I need to somehow numb that out. It was never a conscious decision.
One of the things that I get from interviewing people who have been in addiction, like myself and you, Nick, is that we feel that we're a wee bit different, especially growing up. And you just said that in a couple of sentences ago. What did that feel like?
It's hard to explain, really, and there's probably a lot of factors to it. And I think the underlying fear of being judged by other people, fear of being seen as weak by other people, fear of being laughed at by other people, comparing myself to other people. And I think that when you sort of walk around with that amount of fear, it's going to affect the way you go about things in the world, and the way you build relationships, maybe. But this is just all stuff that I've learned since, if you like, in recovery. This was all, it was all happening behind the scenes, I suppose. And as we've learnt, it's a sort of fertile ground for addictions to grow in.
What age was your first drug?
Probably about 13. I mean, as soon as I went to secondary school, really, I started knocking about people that were smoking. So, I'd have the odd smoke here and there, just cigarettes. But I'd sort of progress into alcohol use, which is it's not uncommon, as you get into secondary school. And then maybe, about 14, I moved on to cannabis. Nothing that you would say was problematic. It was sort of like experimenting, but I do know that it provided a way to fit in with certain circles, and it took away some of that fear.
I completely get that. I completely get that. You spoke about that fertile ground, man, previously, and the fear that comes with the fertile ground as a child, and then to fit in the alcohol and the drugs masks that fear, man, doesn't it? Is that what you think?
Yeah, I do agree. Yeah, and it gave me a social circle that was relatively easy to fit into. So I just had to be, drink and smoke weed or whatever. But it wasn't like a major thing as a kid. I didn't really have money to be blowing loads of amounts of money on drink and drugs. And I left school with decent grades. It wasn't massively problematic at that point. When I left school and I got an apprenticeship and I had a bit of money coming in, and very quickly then it became obvious that I probably didn't use substances in the same way as that a lot of my other friends had done, where it was knocking about on the local park or whatever on a Friday night. It very quickly became a daily thing with the cannabis, to the point where it almost gave me a point to. I was sort of struggling as soon as I left school, really, to find a point to life. And not that I would say I was like sort of depressed or suicidal, but I was starting to question things of, like, I'm going to work every day. Is this it for the rest of my life now? And I suppose I was sort of lost, really, at the time.
You're trying to find your identity, man, aren't you?
Yeah.
That's what you're basically trying to do, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, and it's a difficult, it can be a difficult time.
So, very early on, you're smoking cannabis, man, nearly every day. Is that what you...
Yeah, and that was a problem, because I wasn't keeping an eye on my money. I had no money in my bank account. I was going to work, apprentice wage, not very good. I was blowing all my money on cannabis. And very quickly I went through other substances, sort of amphetamine, ecstasy. And eventually that led on very quickly. I was still 16 at the time, onto heroin, which seemed like a cheaper alternative to cannabis. And it was kind of subtly crept up, because
tell me the difference then between smoking cannabis and smoking heroin. What was the difference? What was the pull from cannabis to heroin? I know you mentioned how cheap it was, because I remember how cheap it was. What was the pull?
The pull was, I just felt like I use cannabis quite a lot to try and switch off, and to try and relax, and to help me sleep at night and stuff like that. But it was more than that as well. I was blowing all my money on this cannabis, and I was, I was sort of trying to fit in with people, and sort people spliff out and what have you. And it became very expensive. And eventually it just doesn't it didn't
It's not
fill
hitting
the
it anymore.
void.
It's not hitting it, is it?
No,
It's not hitting it anymore, is it?
no. And I just got introduced to heroin, which I was scared of to begin with, because I always said, no, I would never do that. But I'd done that with the amphetamine. I'd never take any substance other than cannabis and alcohol, and then I did. And I'll never take pills because people die if they take pills, and then I did. I'd never, heroin was like sort of unthinkable. And then someone says, oh, you can smoke it off oil. Oh, it doesn't seem as bad then. So I smoke it off oil. And very quickly that turned into a daily thing. You know, you try and control it.
Can you tell me the feeling between smoking cannabis and smoking heroin? What's if you could put that feeling into words?
Heroin was just like the warm hug. It was.
That's what people say, isn't it? It's like a warm hug.
It was. And, you know, I'd never experienced something like it. You know, it was, it's powerful. That's why people get addicted. It's it's something that you would chase after.
How fast did heroin come for you?
Very quick. The first time I had it, I was obviously I enjoyed it, but I was quite scared because I could see other people whose life was an absolute mess because of it. So you sort of tell the lies to yourself with the best of intentions. Oh yeah, it's just going to be a payday thing. And to begin with, it was. And then the payday would turn into the whole weekend, and then the whole weekend would turn into I'm looking for money to do it through the week, and very, very quickly, within I'd probably say within 6 months or so, I was going to the drug services.
How old were you then?
I was about 17 when I first went to the drug services.
That's very young, isn't it? 17? Or is that very young? I'm
I would say so.
Yeah.
I would say so. Yeah, I would say so. It goes to show, you know, it was becoming a problem very, very quickly, and it was nothing like the problems that it was to become. I moved on. Well, I didn't move on from heroin. That became a staple. Cannabis, where I could get it, became a staple. And then crack got added into it as well, which, you know, you could probably see sum up the next 15 years with me trying to find ways to stop using,
How did you get, you've got to excuse me, how did you get from heroin to crack? How did that one happen? Or is that just climbing that ladder? Or is it just the circles that you were mixing in? Or
I would say it's sort of goes together anyway now. All the dealers sell it together, and you know, quite soon into me using they went together. But it was like the crack was a bit of a treat to begin with, because obviously the heroin, once you've been doing it for a period of time, just becomes normal. So you're looking for the next thing, and then very quickly that became sort of mixing it, you know.
What's that called? Is that called
Snowballing? Yeah, I mean, I did do that a few times. I tried to, when I was smoking, I would tend to have, I'm going to say this very loosely because I didn't have any control on it, but then I switched to injecting, which was the next progression.
Can I ask you what age that is now?
About 18.
So we're on 18 and we're now injecting. Can I ask you how your life, obviously your life must have been on a whirlwind spiraling down. How was your life? If you can maybe talk about what your life was like from that 18-year-old in that cage of despair that I am talk about spiraling. What must that my life? It must have been like, man, for you as an 18.
Yeah, it was pretty scary because I'd not been brought up around drugs, and it was almost like I'd gone from being a pretty average school kid to injecting heroin in a very short space of time. And it's like any sort of ambitions that I might have had was going to be very difficult to achieve. You know, I couldn't hold a relationship down. No one would be interested. I couldn't hold jobs down. And that sort of became the cycle because, you know, I'd get a job, I'd lose the job through me using. I'd try and get on top of me using a bit, so it might be a short sort of community detox on Subutex or something. And then I'd get another job and the whole cycle would start again. Or I'd get a girlfriend, I'd get on top of things for a bit. And then gradually it'd creep back in again and that whole cycle would begin again. And that was the battle for the next 15
You
years.
also sound as if you must have had a loving family. Am I right there? Because you said that you came from just a normal upbringing. I mean, did you have a mum and dad who must have been worried about you, I would imagine? Or
yeah, they didn't know what was going off. You know, they started to notice things going missing around the house because, as bad as it sounds, the easiest people to steal from is the people that's closest to me. So yeah, things started disappearing from around the house. I'm sure they noticed things before that in my sort of character and people that I was knocking about with. And yeah, you know, it made some, I mean, it must have been absolutely horrendous for them watching me do it, and they can't understand. And it was, you know, I couldn't give them any particular answer to it. I couldn't give them, I would say, yeah, I'm not going to do it, yeah, I'm going to stop it. But I didn't have a clue. I was just, and I'd say things with the best of intentions, but it just wasn't going to happen. And there were times when, like, my mum was begging me not to use, and she would say, oh, we all love you, why is that not enough? And I'd just say, I don't know why, but it's not enough. And I didn't really understand it myself, you know, as a sort of young kid like that. And then she got to the point where they kicked me out. I got into a relationship with someone, moved to a different area, and I did find a bit of stability. I was in quite a bit of trouble with the police at the time, and I suppose maybe them things came together, but it didn't solve nothing. I just found other substances. So I went back to hammering the cannabis, and I went back, I sort of misusing prescriptions and taking prescriptions. So although in some sense I look at that as a time where there was a bit more stability. I stuck at a job for a period of time and didn't get sacked from it. But that crutch was always there. And if that crutch wasn't there, then I would probably just fall to pieces.
so your mum and dad kind of held you up a little bit at a level that you didn't fall completely through the floor?
I would say they tried to do that lots of times throughout the addiction.
And I hear that quite a lot, you know, where my family members and loved ones can hold us up for as long as they possibly can, but it's just not enough, is it, man? As you rightly said, we need to keep digging, man, don't we? When we're in it, we just keep digging.
Yeah, and it's not enough. And, you know, my dad, I suppose in a way, my addictive part sort of used that as a way to, it sort of drove a wedge between my mum and dad, because my mum was quite zero tolerance. My dad was a bit more, you know, try and help me financially. And I sort of, you know, used that as a way to take, to try and take advantage to keep the money coming for the habit. But, you know, I'd try lots of things. I'd try giving my card to my dad, and then I'd be, you know, kicking off so I could have the money out my bank account. You know, all these things are classic things, so many people do. But the power of the addiction was just so much, and gradually that, you know, it went downhill.
Tell me a little bit about the power of addiction. Is there any words that you could describe that the viewers and what that power of addiction feels like? If you could just think for a second and try and describe that.
It's a good question. I mean, it means a lot of things. It might mean something different to somebody
What does it mean
else.
to you?
But to me, it meant by the end just that pure obsession to use more and more, mixed with the hopelessness of this doesn't really do what I want it to do anymore. It doesn't fill that void. You know, the table could be full of the stuff and there wouldn't be enough. And that's a hopeless place to be. It's like the one thing that's been the crutch. And the more it takes away, the more I rely on that to get me through. And there are times where I just thought, you know, the only way out of this is to die. There's no other way. It was like I've tried everything that I can think of to stop.
How long were you in it? How long were you all in, would you say, from 16, 15?
16 to about 31, I think, was the first time when I went to rehab.
16 to 31? 15 years, something?
Yeah, that was pretty much there wouldn't have been a day over that period of time that I would not have took a substance, and most of the time it would have been heroin and crack. And progressively it got worse over that time. But you know, as we suffer with denial, there were times where I thought things was getting better. You know, I'd get a new girlfriend, and yeah, this is going to be different now. It was kind of always looking for something else to fix me, which may have a bit of an effect for a short period of time. But again, there's the power of addiction. It comes back in. It finds a way.
I get this feeling of being lost, from you. That's the feeling that I get. And since I've spoken to you, I get this. I'm feeling that since a child you felt lost. That's the feeling that I've gotten from you.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it was around that sort of thing, you know, an identity crisis of some sorts of where I fit in the world. And, you know, that's another thing that addiction offered me. It offered me a sort of social network, no matter how fickle. It was a social network. It offered me a purpose and direction, which was very simplistic in its nature, but brought along a lot of complexities. And that's where the void was. You know, you take that away, I'm that lost person again.
It's crazy, isn't it, that you speak about direction. In actual fact, you did find a direction in the journey. Yeah, it's not what other people would want, but ultimately you didn't find one that was leading you to this power of destruction.
And again, you know, relating back
I've never heard that, but it's so true.
Yeah, I mean, and that's part of where, you know, the power of addiction comes, because it became my identity. And it's like, you know, I didn't have a problem, you know, I'd walk down the street, people would say, oh, baghead, or, you know, skag rat, or whatever. And I didn't really care, because that was how I identified as myself. The drugs gave me that identity.
Nick, so you've got to 31, you're 15 years since you started drinking, cannabis, heroin, crack and cocaine, and then injecting. You've lived this 15 years of utter addiction, powerlessness. Talk us through your first time that you tried to get off that. What was that like?
The first, what I would call a real attempt to. I had many futile attempts. The net had closed. There was nowhere to sort of go, and that's why I'd often felt that, you know, with the addiction, that it was like a net closing in on me, and there's nowhere to go. And that was something that motivated me through, you know, lack of housing, parents not really wanting anything to do with me anymore, any family. Girlfriend at the time, that had gone. So that motivated me. Someone said about, it was my worker, drug worker at the time, who said about going to a rehab. So I went to a detox first, then I went from there straight to a rehab, which was up and down. It was hard. It was hard at times. Rehab is hard. But I learned so much about myself. I had some really good times there as well. I just wasn't at the point where I was ready to do the work that I needed.
So that was your first attempt, and that was your first real attempt, would you say? Even though man used the word futile, it's still a good attempt.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that one was a good attempt.
How many attempts did we have?
2 rehabs.
Two rehabs. So the second rehab, then, how did?
Yeah, the second rehab, that was a place called Jericho House at Derby. And that was one of the main things that changed my life.
How old were you then?
33. So I'd been kicked out of the last rehab, so I was in one of their aftercare houses. I relapsed, so they kicked me out, and I was living in a hostel in Nottingham. So I was there for a period of time. Didn't take me long before, I'd had a bit of a taste of recovery. I knew there was another way out. I knew it was my fault that I was back in that situation. And I'd heard of Jericho House in Derby. So I thought, I'm going to give this place a go. And it was a lot more sort of off my own back. It wasn't because...
Did you want it more?
I wanted it more, yeah. It wasn't because like my parents is encouraging me to go.
There's a difference in it between when people want it for you and you want it, isn't it? There's a complete difference, isn't there?
There was a big difference. And that in itself brought more support from my parents because they could see a difference. It's not like he's having his arm twisted by us. It's like his arm's up his back from addiction, and he knows there's a way out of it and wants to do different. So I went to Jericho House in Derby. That was a 12-step rehab, which I found really, useful to myself. So a mixture of me being ready, and it gave me such a more of a focused blueprint for recovery, if you like. And they were quite strict there. They were strict with me,
Did you find the start hard? Did you? Because when I started 12-step in my program, I found it hard at the start. I found the structure hard. Well, I would find any structure hard. I found it hard.
It was, yeah. It was. It was a whole process because after I'd done my rattle while I was in there. There was no detox. It's like you come out if you're using on top of methadone, you come off the lot.
Wow.
Cold turkey.
That's serious stuff, isn't it?
It was, yeah. And I felt aside of the withdrawals, but after that, I just felt so empty, almost like numb. I felt like I was never going to laugh again. I felt like I could not, sort of talk to people. I didn't know how to be. And then that got better, and I started doing the work, what you're on about. Yeah. And on the first step, especially, I remember sometimes on that where it was hard. It was hard emotionally. It was harder than sometimes than what the using had been, because it's like learning about myself on a deeper level. Learning this new language of recovery and what that means, and a bit like what I was saying before about, it's not about treating the substance, it's about treating me, and that can be hard to swallow sometimes, because I'd always had that almost victim mentality where everything was always somebody else's fault, and I had to, the blame game had to stop. I had to.
You had to get down. You had to get down.
To take responsibility, as an adult in my, heading into my mid-30s at that point. So I've got to start acting like an adult, and it's not as easy.
I would imagine you've never acted, or I know I had never acted like an adult up until I got sober. I had to take responsibility, and I took responsibility for nothing. Well, what about you? Had you had to act like an adult, or?
Yeah, I think I would have. I did have quite a warped perception of what an adult does, despite having had good role models in my life, to look up to. It's almost like an extension of the addiction. The people that I'd knocked about with, the people that I thought, was who I looked up to as being a man or whatever, was people that had been to prison and stuff, which was like, obviously, not probably taking responsibility. But that's when, and that's why it was difficult in rehab. That's where that perception of everything had to become up for evaluation. With my thoughts and.
So Jericho House, they finally managed to get you clean and sober.
Yeah, they offered what they offer, which is a brilliant way. It's like magic in there, but you've got to do your part, and that's the same, with any 12-step, any recovery model. But it can be a sort of miracle. People used to say, "Don't leave before the miracle happens," because you'd feel like it's not going to happen, and then just over time, pennies start to drop.
How long were you in the Jericho House for?
10.5 months.
10.5 months.
Yeah, and then I went into an aftercare house, and I continued doing the step work with my sponsor from the fellowship. Really got into the fellowship stuff.
Shout out to Jericho House.
Big shout out to Jericho House, yeah.
So basically, in 10.5 months in rehab, then you went into halfway house. You must be coming up to about 35 now. Is that right?
Yeah.
I'm about 35. Tell me about life after Jericho House. Tell me about the life that you're living now. Because I tell you, when I was driving up here, it is beautiful. It's absolutely stunning. The trees, the woods, the countryside. I was like, what is this place? This is stunning. Surely there's no one with an addiction that lives out here.
Well, sadly, addiction
I know,
addiction stretches to all parts.
It does. But just tell me about how you've got sober. Tell me about your recovery. Tell me about the freedom that you are living now.
I mean, it's a difficult one to answer in some way, and like I say, the outside stuff is there to see. But I think it really was the work that I did internally. And I remember when I was doing the step work, and there was a question on step 2, first question about hope on step 2. And the things that I put down on that question that I would hope for, where I stopped, I would have sold myself short, because it's become beyond that. And where my mind was at that time, I couldn't even comprehend the life that I've got. And that's it's not particularly to do with being where I am now geographically, because I had this when I was living in a city centre in Derby. But it's that connection that I have to to myself, most important, but to the people around me. Last year I got married.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, amazing. And that was something I was
But you never thought you'd get married in your life, could you?
No, I didn't think I would. I thought I was going to die an addict.
Yeah.
But it was always something that I suppose I kind of convinced myself that I didn't want it, and that I didn't want to be part of mainstream society, and the job, the family. It felt like conformity. And again, that was something that changed because over time, and it's like a different sort of, because, you know, I had to conform to something. When I was an addict, I was conforming to what my addiction told me I had to do. And there was no choice in that, really, because I didn't know a better way. Now, it's like I've got the freedom to choose things. My mind's been open to things that I do want to do. You know, I do my job, which is, you know, the most rewarding job.
You work for CGL, and when you're detox worker for CGL, aren't you?
I am,
Is
yeah.
that right?
Yeah, which is a job I never thought, it never even occurred to me, particularly to do that. My background was always sort of manual work, welding, stuff like that. So, you know, that's a miracle in itself. And again, it's the job, but it's my connection to the job. It's not like a job where I'm like clock watching. All my jobs was clock watching. It's not a job where the money is the most important outcome from it.
You're giving something back, aren't you? You're giving back, aren't you? And that's important, that connection that you talk about.
Yeah.
You know, and we're giving back to other addicts. You know, addicts helping addicts, because you've been there and lived that in my life.
Yeah, and that's why I wanted to do this. And, you know, appreciate your channel and, you know, something that's part of my recovery now, you know, watching the videos. I can remember one time I spoke to my friend, and it was in the morning, and I spoke to him, and he says, oh, what are you up to? I says, oh, yeah, I just took the kids to school. And he says, oh, gives a recovery,
Hi, I'm Jess, Nicky's wife. I'm so proud of him. He's an amazing husband and father to my children. I look forward to our future together as a family. I love you loads, Nicky.
Hi, I'm Cameron. I'm so proud of Nicky. He is the best stepdad. If I had to describe him in one word, it would be funny. Love you, Nicky.
Hi, I'm Connie. Nicky is the best stepdad. I would describe Nicky as being lovely and caring. Love you, Nicky.
Hi, this is Ziggy. Say I love you,
me,
you,
me,
Daddy.
Daddy.
I love you, Nicky.
Like in a bit of a sarcastic way. And I thought, well, actually, that is a gift of recovery.
Yes, it is.
Because there's no way on earth previously that I could be relied to get upon to get the kids to school. I mean, I'd do it if I could work it around my addiction, but I couldn't get the kids to school.
You know, isn't that one of the biggest gifts? Isn't that one of the biggest gifts of recovery? Taking the kids to school.
Yeah.
People take that for granted, but for people like us, that's a gift from God.
Yeah.
You might, and they'd be trusted to take the kids to school.
That's part of the miracle.
It's a miracle, isn't it?
The miracle that happened, that I could have a relationship and, you know, get married, to meet an amazing person. I mean, I was joking with you before that, you know, the only criteria was someone that say yeah.
Yeah, that's absolutely. We both laughed, didn't we?
Yeah, we did. But that was true, because I just wanted somebody to fix me. And again, it was that, you know, I just needed something from somebody else. I had nothing to give to those relationships. To have a relationship now where, you know, I can give something and somebody gives me something that I want, you know, that's what a good relationship is. It's a healthy relationship.
How many kids you got?
3.
3 kids, and you're married, 3 kids, overcoming addiction, working in addiction and helping other addicts.
Yeah.
I mean, the gifts just keep on coming. But what you have showed our viewers is that you can be in that carnage for a healthy length of time, but there comes a time where you need to put it down and to walk through the door, man, isn't it? Ultimately, as you have said, man, beautifully, to do the hard work, you need to do you need to do it.
Yeah, it's like there's a way out. it's going to be hard work, and it's a bit like taking that leap of faith.
Mm.
But, you know, the benefits that I got from doing it to the best of my ability, and for, you know, no excuses, and, you know, it's sort of self-confidence, self-esteem, peace of mind. I can't remember when I had peace of mind. You know,
I'm laughing because that's so true. It's so true.
and these are little things. You know, it's
Yeah.
nice to have. It's nice to have the job, but it's nice to know that if anything happened to the job, I'm all right. I can get through whatever life's
Yeah.
going to throw me. I don't have to go back to using. I know another way.
Before we end this, if you could speak to someone, if you could speak to the Nick of 16, or if you could speak to the lads out there who are still in the madness, the Nick of 16, what would you say to him? What hope, man, would you give him? Just have a think about it. Just
Yeah, it's a tricky one, because the Nick of 16 didn't particularly listen much. But
So
so I'd probably start with that. I'd probably say, listen, when you are ready to listen,
I like that. I like that.
You know, and you've had enough pain, there's a place where you can go. There's a way out of this, and it's worth the hard work that you'll put in.
I'm absolutely smiling. The reason that I'm smiling is that's one of the best things I've heard. When you've had enough pain.
Yeah. Well, I always say that, you know, one of the beauties of addictions, if you've not had enough pain, it's always there to dish out some more for you. You know, and that's one of the things that I think about. I think, well, the last lot was painful enough. I don't fancy it again, and it's not necessary. I can find other ways.
Nick, it's been an absolute pleasure interviewing. Honestly, it's been an absolute privilege. One of the reasons why I keep smiling is because you show people there's a way out, and you tell people in quite simple terminology. If you've had enough pain, just go back out. I love that simplicity, the way that you talk.
Yeah.
So I mean, honestly, man, it's beautiful, and it's what I needed to. It's basically what I needed to hear, man, as well. So thank you very much, man, Nick, for doing this interview for Unfiltered Lives Other Side.
No, thanks for having us, Charlie.
Thanks, man.